going to share a lot of information today. I'm going to record our sessions. I'll make this recording available to you. The presentation or the sway that we're looking at, you will have access to as well. Eportfolios, 10% of our grade requires or will be part of this ePortfolio that we'll talk about today. And so I want to give you some ideas about what an ePortfolio is and how you can create your ePortfolio, not only for this class, but for really any class this semester or any subsequent or later semesters. Okay, so the idea with this ePortfolio is that it's personal, you create it, but it's one ePortfolio for any work that you possibly could complete for the BA. Since all of you are just beginning the BA, this is a good opportunity for you from the very beginning to create a space online that demonstrates your knowledge, your skills, and your attitudes as a professional. So it's important to realize this ePortfolio is specifically for professional purposes. Okay, so this won't be necessarily a space that you would upload pictures from last night's party. Okay, this is more of a professional space for you, thinking down the road, later on, you entering the workforce, you want to be a teacher or a translator or an interpreter. This is a space that demonstrates your knowledge, your skills, and your attitudes, your dispositions. Why create an ePortfolio? So what's the purpose of having an ePortfolio? An ePortfolio is a way to present your knowledge or your understandings, your skills, what you can do, and your attitudes, your disposition, your ethics. What kind of ethics do you have as a professional teacher? Of course it relates to teaching and learning that stem from one's own educational philosophy. So we'll talk a little bit more about educational philosophy. In fact, probably next week, we'll have an opportunity to create our own educational philosophy. But it's important to realize that this is a space, an online public space that you can create where you can add your evidence of your knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So we create an ePortfolio with a particular audience in mind. Who is the audience? Who's going to be looking at this information about you as a professional? So it's very important to think from the beginning, who is the audience for this particular ePortfolio? As you are enrolled in the bachelor's degree here in English language teaching, some of your audiences might be the following. Maybe a potential audience could be a director or a school coordinator who's responsible for hiring. So think of a situation where you apply for a job, you're in an interview, and you share your online portfolio. That would be a good complement to your curriculum. All right, so you have your curriculum with all of your information, and you have your online ePortfolio that complements each other. A committee chosen to select students for an exchange program. A lot of students within the BA have an opportunity to study abroad. They have an opportunity to study in another state in Mexico or maybe even outside of Mexico. So hopefully some of you will be able to also take advantage of those opportunities. An ePortfolio can help demonstrate what you know, and it might help in the application process. A committee chosen to select students for graduate programs. So, of course, this is down the road. After you get a BA, some students want to continue their education and pursue a master's degree. So this would be another opportunity or another potential audience that might be interested in looking and benefiting from your own ePortfolio. Okay, so it's important to realize from the very beginning, why are you doing this and who is the potential audience? Again, not just your teachers, but those outside in the real world who might benefit from accessing this type of information. Now, in educational philosophy, so we mentioned that your ePortfolio really is about your educational philosophy. And I'll talk briefly today about it. Next week, we'll spend a whole week developing our educational philosophy. But very simply, an educational philosophy states the purpose of education, the role of the student, your role as a teacher, and the role of the teacher in the community. So think of the following questions, or consider the following questions when you think about an educational philosophy. Why do you want to teach, or why do you teach? To whom do you teach? Do you teach children? Do you teach adults? Do you teach academic English? Do you teach professionals at a company? How and what are you going to teach? Okay, how do you teach? What are some of your methodologies? What types of materials or technologies do you use in your teaching practice? Where do you want to teach? Do you want to teach here in Aguascalientes? Do you want to teach outside of Mexico or another state? Do you want to teach children, elementary, kindergarten, etc.? So think of an educational philosophy as an opportunity for you to answer what you teach, how you teach, why you teach, where you teach, to whom you teach. All those question words that relate to your own teaching, the educational philosophy allows you to share that information. Okay? It's your philosophy on what teaching is and what learning is. Remember that an educational philosophy is a living text. What does that mean, a living text? And I have living text in quotation marks. What do you think that means?
A real text?
In what way? In what way is it real?
That you can apply in your life.
Okay, so you can apply it in your life.
Or in the job, in this case.
Okay, bless you. Okay, anybody else have any other ideas?
Something that you do in the moment.
All right, something you do at the moment. Yes, that's true. Remember that an educational philosophy is a living text in that it changes as you change, as you live, as you go through your life. We're always learning things, right? So an educational philosophy, your educational philosophy next week is going to be different, perhaps, than your educational philosophy in 2 years, in 4 years, in 10 years. So your educational philosophy changes as you change, as you develop, as you gain more information, you gain more knowledge, more skills, your attitudes change. This educational philosophy also changes. So it's very important, just like your resume, to go back and look at your educational philosophy and say, is this still what I think? Is this still what I teach, how I teach, when I teach, to whom I teach? So even though we're starting it now, don't think that what you come up with next week will be your educational philosophy for the next 30 years. No, it's going to change. Okay? An educational philosophy is a textual representation of who you are as both a person and a professional at any given time. Once you have developed your educational philosophy, go back and periodically to see if changes are needed. Okay, so this is kind of what we're talking about, that it's not something fixed, it's going to change as you change. Now, if you don't change, if you never change your mind, you never learn anything new, well then maybe your educational philosophy won't change very much either. But all of us are lifelong learners. We're going to continue to learn. And so the idea is that our educational philosophy is reflective of our own beliefs about teaching and learning. So there are some videos in this presentation. I'm not going to go through these videos. Again, I'm going to share. All of you will have access to this presentation, and I really encourage you to go back and watch some of these videos. They're rather short, but these are giving you some, in this case, an example of an educational philosophy that you can look at. And next week, we're going to spend the entire week developing our own educational philosophy, and we'll look more deeply at some of these videos that I'm sharing here with you today. So how to create a student e-portfolio. So we talked about why. Now let's talk about how. How can we create our own e-portfolio, and what should we include? Now, it's, I think, important to repeat this idea that this presentation, what I want to share with you today are suggestions. You're going to have some flexibility in what and how you create your own e-portfolio, but some of the suggestions here are just that. They're just suggestions. Mapping your e-portfolio requires students to make decisions. So you're going to need to make decisions on a continual basis as to what learning objects or artifacts to include. I'm going to use the word today, artifacts. Artifacts can be they can be assignments that you did in class. They can be videos. They can be text documents. They can be anything that you create or that you find that you want to include in your e-portfolio. I'll use the word artifacts to describe those items. So the bachelor degree program, I'm going to open up quickly the curriculum map. I'm going to give you some suggestions about how you can organize your artifacts in your e-portfolio based on the 4 different strands that are listed here. English speaking ability, this is our first strand, and I'll speak mainly in English here, although this is in Spanish. Applied linguistics is another strand. We have a methodology, teaching methodology strand, and we have a teaching practicum strand. So today I'd like to talk about how we can divide up our artifacts within those 4 general areas. And again, I'm just basing it on the courses that you take in the BA starting next year. Okay? And of course, our class is in Prope. Which of these 4 strands do you think Prope falls under?
The first one?
That's right. So our job in Prope is to improve our speaking skills, our writing skills, our reading skills, grammar, vocabulary. So any products that you complete this semester and next semester, you could include under this strand. Here are some types of information that you can include with each artifact. So let's assume that you have an essay that you want to include in your e-portfolio. Here are some things that you can include along with your essay. So number 1, a standard number and description. So you could call it artifact for standard 1. Standard 1 might be desarrollo de habilidades. I'm developing the speaking activities. Number 2, you can name the artifact. So you give it some sort of name or title. Okay. Number 3, it's probably a good idea to include the date. So when did you complete it? It'd be nice to see artifacts that you did a long time ago and compare those with artifacts that you're doing now, maybe 1 or 2 years or 3 years later. Number 4, the course number and description. So remember when we looked at the curriculum map, maybe you include the name of the course or the number of the course to link this artifact with this course. Okay, that's another option. And the last, number 5, a rationale. Why did you include the artifact in the portfolio? This is very important. Why did you include it? There has to be a reason. Maybe you're proud of writing a really good, cohesive and coherent paragraph, and you want to share that. Okay, you create a rationale. Why did you choose this? I like how I wrote this paragraph. I used a lot of sentence connectors. Whatever rationale you would like to provide, you can include this along with your artifact. So a rationale might include a few sentences explaining why you included the artifact in the portfolio. Explain what you learned, what challenges you overcame, what came easy, What was challenging? What was difficult? Connect the experience of having completed this artifact to your overall ongoing professional development. There's absolutely nothing wrong with expressing challenges. This one paragraph, I worked really hard because I always had problems with sentence connectors, but I was able to include 3 sentence connectors correctly. That kind of thing. So this just shows you what kind of leader and what kind of learner you are as you create this rationale per each artifact. Skills. So let's look now at standard number 1. So this is going to be our skills development in English communication. Standard number 1. So skill development can include the 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing, and grammar and vocabulary developments. In particular, public speaking is one of the most important skills that one can develop. So in the BA, you're going to have an opportunity to take a public speaking course. And I think a public speaking course and anything that you can create, a video, a presentation, would be very helpful for you to include in your ePortfolio. This is maybe a year or 2 from now. But this is an example of you find those courses and those products, the work that you do that you're proud of, and you share those. With this particular standard, we were focusing on your ability to communicate, your proficiency level. Okay? So think about that as you are developing, especially this semester, because we are within this first standard. We want to develop our skills. Regardless of the focus, standard number 1 can be subdivided into basically 2 productive skills. What are the 2 productive skills? Speaking and writing. So you could share your products for speaking and writing and show evidence of your reading abilities, your listening abilities, right? Depending on what type of activity, your grammar development, your vocabulary, of course, all through these 2 basic productive skills, speaking and writing. So this is one way that you can divide up online in your ePortfolio 2 different standards, 2 different areas, speaking and writing. Standard number 2, applied linguistics. Now this has to do with knowledge about how languages are learned. Applied linguistics, knowledge about how languages are learned, can be divided into several subdivisions. Now here we have a lot of different options. We can divide it up by class. There are many different options, but just to share with you one option, you could divide it up into grammar, phonology, maybe linguistics in general. That includes psycholinguistics, also social linguistics. You might decide to separate the types of linguistic classes. It's really up to you. You'll take a course on discourse analysis. Maybe you have a separate section on discourse analysis. You don't have to make all these decisions today or even this semester. Okay, these are things to be thinking about as you develop your ePortfolio. You might go back and keep changing and modifying how you organize. But right now, I just want to give you kind of a general background of what you might think about as you develop your ePortfolio. So the former relates to grammar. So notice I mentioned grammar in Standard 1, and I mentioned grammar in Applied Linguistics. Mainly the difference is the grammar in your the first standard, skills development, really is about how you use grammar. Do you use it well in writing and in speaking? And in Applied Linguistics, it's more about how grammar is learned. It's more like the teaching, about the teaching and the learning of grammar. So we have our standards. These are just examples. English literature, that might be another section. Linguistics, social linguistics, psycholinguistics, discourse analysis. Standard number 3, teaching methodology. So now we're going to look at the theory behind teaching and learning. So consider subdividing Standard 3 into categories. by following the same numbering scheme as above. One way to categorize this section is by theory. So when you get into these classes, you're going to be learning about behaviorism, cognitivism, social cultural theory, maybe connectivism. So you can look at maybe dividing up the theories in your ePortfolio into different categories based on the type of theory. The standard allows the teacher professional to not only demonstrate one's knowledge and skills about methodology, but also attitudes regarding an overall approach. So in your ePortfolio, when you talk about theory, you're going to be explaining theory that you think is the best way of teaching. Remember, this is all about your own educational philosophy. So within the context of your educational philosophy, you will talk about the types of theories that you learned. Standard number 4, teaching practicum. Now this is the actual hands-on teaching practice where you're in the classroom. You might decide to share maybe a 10-minute clip of you actually teaching a class, and maybe you're proud of something that you did, the way that you used materials, maybe the way that you implemented a certain theory. Maybe the students did something really interesting and creative, and you want to share that. You're proud of that experience. You can include it under Standard 4 in your ePortfolio. So you can separate this based on any evidence linked to one's practice. It's really going to be up to you. As you get into teaching practicum, you're going to find different categories, different ways that you can divide up each of these standards. All right, so now let's look at content to consider in a personal, professional ePortfolio. So I'm not going to go through all of this list, but this is a rather long list of additional types of artifacts that you can include. Again, these are just suggestions, and you're not going to include all of these things. But let's say here we have multiple instructional strategies. Maybe you talk about some strategies, learning strategies that you use as a learner. That could be something that you include in your ePortfolio. Personal goal setting. Maybe that you want to put some personal goals, some professional goals, and you want to include that in your ePortfolio. I think that's a great idea. I think that's really good. That way the person sees that you have goals, that you want maybe 5-year goals. You want to travel abroad, you want to work abroad, maybe you want to write a book, maybe you want to get a master's degree, whatever it happens to be, you can include that in your ePortfolio. Maybe partnerships. We're going to start our language exchange next week. Maybe share some information about that experience, with in your ePortfolios. Okay, maybe that's something that you want. Maybe you form some partnerships or some friendships that are either more social or maybe they're more professional, but you can decide if that's something that you want to include in your ePortfolio. Let's talk about where you can post. Where can you host your ePortfolio? What kind of technologies can you use to host your ePortfolio? And again, I want to share some suggestions, but these, again, are going to be up to you. And if you're connected online right now with your cell phone, feel free to go through some of these websites that we talk about today. Again, I'm not going to show all the videos, but I do recommend that everyone look at all the videos in this presentation later outside of class. It'll give you more of a deeper understanding of some of the options for hosting. So I have 2 videos here that I'm just going to talk about today. The 5 main hosting sites that came to mind for me, and these are all free versions, are the following. So Google Sites. Google Sites is a free site, of course. Google's been around for a long time, and Google Sites has been around for a long time. But this is an example that I'm showing here where you can organize quite easily information. Now this is a class, but you can organize this however you would like. This is one of many templates or formats, so you don't have to be a design computer expert to create this space. You basically choose the template, say I like these colors, I like this format, and it creates it automatically in seconds, all of the information. And then from here, you can edit and add. I can take out this information, or I can add to it. I can embed videos. I can create announcements, right? And so all of this information is quite easy to use. Google Sites is one option that you can use to create your ePortfolio. Another example, wiki spaces. If you like wikis, this is an option. It's fairly user-friendly. They have what's called widgets, which allow you to add a lot of different types of content. Wiki spaces is another option. Wix. Now Wix happens to be a personal favorite with many students. So Wix is an option. These are some examples of different websites. We won't look at all of them, but you can go through and see some good examples, and I'll show you at the end of this presentation some student examples. Students that this semester who are creating ePortfolios, and students from prior semesters who have also created ePortfolios. So you don't have to be an expert to make these really professional looking ePortfolios. Weebly is another option. This is an example of Weebly, and very nice and attractive, visually appealing website. Notice that you can easily navigate up here through the different pieces of information, right? So you can share information about yourself and so on. Music and videos. You can embed videos in all these different websites. And WordPress. WordPress is another example. This looks a little bit more like a blog, but if you notice here at the top, there are different pages that this person has created, so you can do something similar. I think the main thing is to kind of look through some of these options and decide which one you feel you are more comfortable with. All of them are fairly user-friendly. Again, I've had many students start right up with no experience, and they haven't had too many problems. If you do have problems or questions, of course, that's why I'm here in the class, to help, and you can send me emails and we can discuss it in class, of course, if you have issues. Now, Creative Commons is, has anybody heard of Creative Commons out of curiosity? No? All right. When you use information online in a public way, we have to be careful with licensing. So, for example, we can't just use any image or any picture that we happen to find in Google, because maybe we don't have rights, we don't have the right or the permission to put it on our own website for the whole world to see. So we have to be careful to understand a little bit about licensing. So I want to explain very briefly what Creative Commons license is. It's a free and easy way that anyone can assign a license to an artifact. For example, if you have a picture, you can assign it a Creative Commons license, and then you can publish it, and other people can use that information, use that image, and they don't need your permission. All they would have to do is give you credit, right? So if I want to use your picture that you have on your website, all I have to do is include a link back to your website to say, I got this image from Carlos, and here's the link. So the person can go to Carlos's site and say, okay, here's the original picture, right? That's all I have to do. I don't need to contact Carlos. Hey, Carlos, can I use your picture on my website? I don't have to do that, okay, with Creative Commons. So with Creative Commons, if you guys go to, and this is a website that I would write in your notes, it's called Creative Commons Search. And I include the link in the presentation. But this is a website that makes it very easy to search for products or artifacts under a Creative Commons license. Let's say that I want to look for an image of a tree, and I'm going to leave these check marked. It says here, I want something that I can use for commercial purposes and modify and adapt, and I can't read that, and build upon. If I select Google Images with tree, then all of these images from Google I can use. It's like a filter. So I don't have to worry about it. I know that if I want to use this picture of this tree, I can use it. I don't have to get permission. As long as I what? I give the credit, exactly. I give the credit back to the author or the person who created the work. In this case, all I would have to do is include the link. Just include the hyperlink back to this page. So if I click on View Image, this link up here, I would just copy and paste that link. Say, this is where I got the image. It's not my image. I took it from this space, but now I can do whatever I want. I can publish it. I can modify it. I can Photoshop it. I can put my face right in the middle of the tree, and I won't have a problem. Somebody else might have a problem with my face in the middle of the tree. But you won't have a problem publishing the tree. So be careful with images with your friends. With your friends. Sometimes it's really easy to take a picture of our friends and upload it. We do it to Facebook, right? All the time. But be careful with your public ePortfolio. If you want to upload a picture with your friends, get their permission. Just ask them. Okay? That you need to ask permission. You say, hey, do you mind if I publish this picture with your face on it in my ePortfolio for the entire world to see? And if anyone has a problem, my suggestion would be don't do it. My suggestion in general is never upload pictures with friends, just to be on the safe side. Okay? But images that you find in Google or Flickr, just follow this search and you should be okay. You should not have problems with Creative Commons as long as you pay attribution, as long as you give credit to the person who created the work. There are different types of licensing, but for now, I think we'll stop there for Creative Commons. Okay. So again, I recommend looking at this presentation. I give an example here. If you notice this image, I have down here photo attribution. Photo attribution. If I click on this, see that? That's where this picture came from. So somebody can say, well, where did this picture come from? You don't, okay, here it is. And guess what? Wikipedia is under what kind of license? What do you think? What kind of? Yeah, okay. So Wikipedia is under a Creative Commons license. Guess what? You can use all information you want from Wikipedia in your ePortfolio. I'm not recommending that for essays, okay? That's not essays. But if you find an image, even if you find text, you can add to it, you can adapt it, you can copy and paste it, right? But remember that this space is to show your knowledge and your abilities. So we don't want to copy and paste everything from outside sources. We want to create something, right? This is your opportunity to create. Be imaginative, be creative, be unique, right? So Creative Commons, this is an example of how you might pay attribution. And yes, so here's the link to the Creative Commons search that we just talked about. So if you're looking at this presentation, this link here will take you to that same page. Here's a video where I talk about the website Creative Commons. So I highly recommend that everyone take a look at this video on your own. This will go into a little bit more depth as to what is Creative Commons. Now, I will just briefly say something about YouTube. In your ePortfolio, some of you might decide to embed or link YouTube videos into your own space. Maybe these YouTube videos are your own videos. Maybe these videos are from someone else and maybe you modify the videos. be careful with YouTube because there are two types of licenses. YouTube has a license, and YouTube allows creators to indicate or use a Creative Commons license. So just make sure when you're using a YouTube video, if you're just linking to the video, it's usually not a problem. If you're modifying the video, then I would only modify videos that are under a Creative Commons license. Even though it's under YouTube, make sure that it's under this type of license if you're modifying. But again, if it's just an embed, copy and paste, there shouldn't be a problem because you're just linking to the video. And again, I'll help you with that as you start developing your own e-portfolios. I'll be giving you feedback throughout the process to make sure that we're okay with Creative Commons. All right, now let's see some examples. This semester I'm teaching a 5th semester composition class, and these are my students. I think I'm missing one student here that's not listed, but let's take a look at a few examples. Now they've just created these e-portfolios, so they don't have a lot of information. But what I want you to see is they've spent very little time creating it, but just the different types of e-portfolios that are possible. I think everybody is using Wix, Wix.com. Most students decide to use Wix, but this is an example. Now notice the color, the contrast. Notice the menus across here, so anybody can kind of navigate through, right? And again, there's not much information here, which is fine. And you know, the idea is to get started and to contribute little by little to your space. So if I click here, it'll take me to composition course, and then maybe she'll have some different information here. But this is one example. Notice she has her name up here, and she has what's called an about page. An about page is really important because this is where it gives information about you as a professional. Now in our case, and you guys are going to do the same thing, she has included an educational philosophy in her About Me page. Right? So this is very helpful because again, we get to know who this person is by looking at the educational philosophy. Here's another example, kind of a nice background. Most of these are coming from a template, so they've already been designed. Make sure that when you create your own space that you eliminate things images that you aren't using that really is not part of your own space. Notice here that this looks really good, but notice the O in portfolio gets a little bit lost. See that right there? So this is an example of just being careful, making sure that it's easy to read. It should be easy to read. You can have all the pictures and flowers and all you want, but if you can't read it, yeah, it makes it difficult, right? So it should be very easy to read, and it should be easy to navigate around the different parts of the information or the pages. Here we have an image of the student along with her teaching philosophy. Okay. In this case, maybe the text could be a little bit bigger, right? We don't want it too big. It looks a little bit small, maybe just a little bit larger to make it easier to read. But this is a very good start to an e-portfolio. Let's take a look at another example. Here we have another example. We have now the navigational bar along the left-hand side. Every student is deciding which template to use. I have not made any suggestions to anyone, except for today I did. I did get some feedback. But everything that we see here, each student went in, decided on which colors, what kind of fonts or letters, and what kind of template, and that everybody chooses. Here we have another example of an educational philosophy. All these are public pages. Anybody can see and access this information. Nice background, he's got his picture, events, okay. And here up here along the top, he's got his different sections, okay. So these guys have just finished a 5-paragraph essay, so they're going to include essays in their e-portfolios. In our case, you guys could include your paragraphs, right? Okay, we were talking about this morning. This side over here looks really nice, good contrast, nice and big. But notice on this side, even the student mentioned that she wasn't really happy with how this looked because it's kind of difficult to read. So maybe she changes the font, maybe she changes the background image. She has a lot of options. Maybe she decides to put it somewhere else, okay? But when you guys are creating your own space, be aware of colors, contrast, making sure that it's easy to read. Okay, again, good contrast here, but notice how here it gets a little bit difficult to read. So maybe a different image, maybe an outline along the text, but this looks good down here. My educational philosophy opens up. Okay, this actually downloads. Okay, so if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Yeah, I totally anticipate everyone having questions, right? So just ask me, of course, ask your classmates, but just start looking around and trying to find that hosting site that you want to use. And I'd like for you to try to make a decision by next Monday, so that you can start uploading. Next week I'd like to start uploading the paragraphs that we've been working on so far this semester. Okay, so. Let me know if you have doubts or issues, problems with creating or finding a host. See me right away. You can, of course, email me. But if it's something that we need to look at online, maybe it's easier to come by my office and I can open up the computer and we can look at it online. All right, guys, I think we'll stop there for today.